all. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris Peltier. I'm a graduate from the class of 1995, and I currently have the honor of serving as the College of Medicine Alumni Council president. I'm going to kind of let you know a little bit of how the agenda is going to work tonight. We have two distinguished speakers that are going to give us some updates on what's going on at the College of Medicine, UC Health, and Research. Dean Flack's going to start and is going to, again, just kind of let us know about what's going on in the college, how the year is going so far. Going to talk a little bit about the class of 2024, an update on diversity and inclusion, and then also have some exciting news about a recently funded alumni scholarship. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Casella, who's going to give us an update on research at the college, and especially talking about some of the very cutting edge and exciting COVID trials. Just a few housekeeping rules. Please, we're going to ask that you keep your microphones on mute, which you can see down at the bottom of the WebEx screen. You are more than welcome to share your videos, as long as it's not interfering with the quality of your presentation. We actually like to see you, so it would be nice. And I appreciate everybody saying where they're from. It kind of gives us an idea of where our alumni are tuning in from today. And then we're going to definitely have time for question and answers, but we are going to do questions and answers at the end after both presentations. I want to make sure I give both speakers plenty of time to present what they want to do. But throughout their presentations, please, we're going to do that via the chat function. So please feel free to enter questions in the chat function. And I know from past presentations that Dean Flack will often sort of answer questions as we go as well. So please feel free to answer, to ask questions, and then we'll do a question and answer session at the end, and I will be monitoring the chat box. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. Dean Andy Flack is the Senior Vice President for Health Affairs and is the Christian R. Holmes Professor and Dean of the College of Medicine. Andy?
Thanks, Chris. First thing I want to do is I want to thank Chris for the great work that he does for the Alumni Association. Chris just recently received an award for his commitment and dedication. And I don't remember the title of the award, so I can't say that. So maybe Mary Jo can jump in if somebody remembers. But he was recognized for his volunteer efforts, and we really appreciate everything that does. Mary Jo, do you?
Yes, he was our Network Volunteer of the Year for the University of Cincinnati. So that's
well, thank you. I just want to say that was quite an honor, but it really is it was a team award. We have a great team with Mary Jo and Kim and Gabe and Jeff and everybody at the foundation. So thank you, Andy.
So they're all clapping for you. You just can't hear them because you told them to stay on mute. So, but I do, I think the alumni of the College of Medicine are a great asset, tremendous asset. We want to keep on building relationships with this. As Chris said, in addition to Brett Casella, who is our Senior Associate Dean for Clinical and Translational Research, you'll hear from him later. Also, I noticed that Steve Baxter is on here, and Steve is very actively involved with our medical school. He's an alum, actively involved with our medical school curriculum. So if I get anything wrong, Steve, you can unmute yourself and yell at me and correct me on that. Really appreciate the great work that Steve is doing, leading our Education Policy Committee and really helping to shape the curriculum as we move into the future, and the great work they did. We start off with just a little bit about admissions, and on the extremely problematic but positive side. With admissions. This year, our entering class is 184. We were targeting it towards 180. At 180, we taxed our resources, in particular for community preceptors. But despite with fewer offers this year, we had more people accepting. Most years we go 10, 20 or so into the wait list. This year, obviously, we didn't get into the wait list, and we were sweating how many extra students we were going to have in this group. And that's the current class that we have right now. And the admissions process going on right now, as you can all imagine, is extremely different than it has ever been in the past. It is going to be all virtual. So we will have students who will get accepted to medical school in Cincinnati who may have never set foot in Cincinnati until they come here to find housing before they come for medical school, to do things like that. So it's a very, very different process. Dr. Abby Tissot leads our admissions team and is doing great work. Many of you may be familiar with our process. Our interviewing process consists of the multiple mini interview where they have 8 stations that they go through. Some of you may have participated in some of that. And if you would like to, they're always looking for more. This year it's going to be virtual. So it's going to be a whole different process. And I think one of the strengths that our admissions committee has, they do a phenomenal job on the recruitment process also, not just the selection process, but the recruitment process when the students come to town. And that's hard to replicate. And it's hard to try to sell what you're doing and where you're doing when you're looking at a bunch of flat people on the screen and doing things like that. You know, we all have a little bit of Zoom fatigue and all the things that go on of looking like that. So it'll be real interesting to see what happens. Nationally and locally, applications are up. So more students are looking to go into medicine. Somewhat surprising in light of the way the medical profession has been handled or treated to some extent with the lack of PPE and the stresses and the strains, but it still is very desirable. A lot of people are still looking to go into medical school with that. So despite those problems that we all face dealing with COVID. Our first year class, I think we have some interesting dynamics going on. They're here, they're 184 strong, but it's been very, very hard for them because they've not been able to get the socialization part of sitting around, talking to one another, talking to the upperclassmen, hearing the complaints of the upperclassmen, but also the guidance of what you need to do to survive and get through from the wizened old second years to do that. So I think it's a real issue, and we're struggling with how to get them to bond as a group when they're sitting around studying and doing small groups and lectures all remotely. Now, not all the curriculum is remote. We do have some in-person activities. So in the first year, we've not completely done remote with gross anatomy, for example. Dr. Giffen, Bruce Giffen, is still running the gross anatomy lab, but with smaller groups and with appropriate PPE to make sure that everybody is protected and safe in that process. And we also in the first and second year have some small group activities that they come in for. And we also have some simulation activities, including some standardized patients. And all of those activities require PPE. And just imagine, a standardized patient, that we're trying to bring in to do some of this, and they're going to have 10, 20, 30 different students coming in and poking and prodding at them, or even just talking to them in an exam room. It's hard to manage all this. And again, our simulation center staff has done a phenomenal job of the logistics of all of this because you have to have much more frequent, smaller groups. At the university, we are still on significant restrictions, and this is the entire university. And trying to limit certainly no more than 50 as the largest group with appropriate distancing, but really trying to keep things less than 10 whenever possible. And if you've down in the area and you're in the building, you'll see the nice little circles on the floors to keep you 6 feet apart. And we have people walking around looking and checking people to make sure that they have their face masks. And everybody's been really, really good. So good that we have now, as of October 1st, really opened up our labs again. In our clinical, not our clinical, but our research labs, we had restricted them pretty significantly. We had gone back to about half, and now we've opened up even more as long as they can maintain physical distancing, because we had very little, if any, exposures while people were back in the lab. So people were taking it very seriously. The researchers really wanted to come back to work. We need the teachers in the building also to do things. So I think we're doing that pretty well. And even at the university level for the undergraduates, compared to that university up in Butler County that had over 1,000 students testing positive and big outbreaks of COVID among the students, it's been fairly controlled. First weekend back, there's a little outbreak, but the students are doing pretty well. Yes, there are some parties, there are occasional things, but we have testing programs and protocols in place. And we've actually now just started to look at testing the medical students also, because we have had some first and second year students and some of our undergraduate students test positive for COVID. We've not had major outbreaks or any super spreader events. In the third and fourth years, they're back in their clinical rotations. And it's been really good to see that all the health systems in town, UC Health, Tri-Health, Christ Hospital, have welcomed the students back. There were some initial concerns whether they would want the students back, but I think the students are trying to catch up. The third year students got pulled out of rotations in March, so they had a couple months to make up. And trying to get the fourth year students in. So with people like Steve Baxter and others leading the charge, we've had to do some curriculum modifications to get everybody graduated last year. So nobody didn't graduate because they didn't get to meet all the requirements, but also now doing modifications to the curriculum also to make sure people can come back. We are hoping that even if we do get an outbreak of COVID in the community, that we will be able to maintain the students in the clinical settings. Because if we have any more pullouts, then it may affect graduation dates and things like that, because students, the current fourth year students, may not have enough time in the clinical settings to do things. And I think the students are doing pretty well. Their experience is probably not as robust as it typically is at the College of Medicine. And as you all are very well aware, the clinical training is really one of the things that distinguishes UC from most other medical schools, the hands-on clinical education that people get. But volumes are a little different, and we try to keep them away from COVID patients whenever we can to do things, and that's the Association of American Medical Colleges' guidelines, and that's what we have to try to follow, the accreditation standards. But we have a really robust group that is working really hard to make sure that the students get the appropriate education that they need during their time. One of the things that I just was thinking about the other day is each year at match day we see a bunch usually a couple or two that are proposed and get married that they met in medical school, or around graduation time there's somebody who's getting married around graduation weekend when people are in town and things like that. I don't know how that's going to work out for a class that only gets to see each other online and virtually and remotely and not get the interactions like that anymore. So we'll have to do some statistics, and maybe we'll do a little paper on the effect of COVID on medical students meeting one another and marrying one another, and see if there's been any difference based on that, to see what happens with that. But overall, I think the medical students are doing really, really well. We did have a very unique orientation this year for the incoming class. We could not get the whole class together. We don't have a venue big enough for social distancing to do that. And anyway, we're capped off at 50 students. But we did have them come in some groups to do things, that a lot of it virtually and online. I think the students enjoyed it as much as you can with this. Overall, it was rated positively, with the caveat is it was great for what we had to do under the circumstances, but we really wish we didn't have to do it that way. So again, the admissions team, the student affairs team, I think has done a great job of trying to facilitate the entry into medical school. I think some of the first year students had a little difficulty accommodating because they weren't talking to one another, how somebody else was studying, how the second years told them, and they were still in the undergraduate mode. And their last couple of years of undergraduate probably were probably remote and distance learning also. So that whole socialization aspect, I think I was on a call with the Association of Academic Health Centers earlier today, and one of the issues was the scarring. It's not just a scarring of the lungs that we'll see with COVID, but it's a scarring of society and the scarring of people, and it's going to change us in so many different ways. Grandkids that I have, 3 young grandkids, who with schooling, and what are you doing with that in the socialization to medical students, working with patients and doing all these things. So we have to learn, and we're going to have to adapt in a whole lot of different ways. In addition to the medical students, we have other categories of students on campus. We have undergraduates, the Med-Sci program, medical sciences program, led by Anil Menon, And Anil has run a really, really good program. It's a robust program, and it is. I will say here, I got to be careful what I say in public because things get attributed to me. But it is the premier program at the university, the most select program in there. But my fellow deans don't like me saying that. But he's done a great job with that. They are mostly remote at this point in time for the undergraduate, although they have some lab experience, so they do come in some. I just saw that Dr. Ruhlman put in, have medical students. Yes, I did mention some medical students did. It's not just an undergraduate problem. Some medical students did. We had some occupational medicine, occupational health, allied health students, and nursing students. So it's out in the community in that age group. And they go out and do things. And interestingly, one of the areas that we're most concerned about, people are really, really good about wearing their masks most of the time, but they take them off to eat. And so when they take them off to eat, we've noticed that they're not always keeping the distance. And I'm more and more convinced. I was convinced early on. Now I think the CDC is even indicating it's not just droplets, but it's aerosol spread too. And so, the distance is really, really important. So we have at least one case where, the group was all together, and when they were in the class and they were doing things, but then they went out, even outside, sitting outside eating, they were all bunched up together, and there was, some spread among a small group of students in that way. And the other parts of things are just, human nature. We had a fire drill last week in the medical sciences building. And we all went outside and, standing out there, it was a pretty nice day. It wasn't terribly cold. And everybody was pretty well spaced while they're out there. And when the announcement came back that you can go back in after the fire drill, it was just everybody bunched up shoulder to shoulder at the door going in, just not thinking about, gee, these are the things that we have to start thinking differently and change. And that's really, really hard to do things like that. So the undergraduates, I think are doing well. In addition to the undergraduate medical sciences program, we now are starting a minor in public health and really looking through the College of Medicine to create a public health undergraduate major, and possibly as early as next year with that. And that's being led by Chris Lewis, who's now in the provost's office. He's in the family doc. He's one of my colleagues in practice over at UC Health at one of the clinical sites. Phil Diller, who is the Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, and our Department of Environmental and Public Health Sciences, along with several other colleges. So this is a truly interdisciplinary program involving multiple colleges. And I think this is going to be a really big thing. We started this before the coronavirus pandemic indicated that we really do need a lot of public health professionals in this country. So we're on the cusp of being in the right place with that. And then the other group is our grad students. And we have close to 700 grad students in the college. We think about the medical students and we think about the undergraduates, and they're a little bit of a different entity because they're all out in the different labs. They do their first year of coursework, and that's why they're not as cohesive a group in the same way the medical students all get together at the same time. But the labs being closed, that hurt some of them and delay towards degree if they needed to be doing research and things like that. So there are a lot of things going on with the educational programs overall. And grad students are now very happy that they can get back in the lab and move on with their careers also. So that's pretty much, about the, admissions and the current things with the students. As Chris said, I like to do things more by questions and things like that, so you can put things in, or we can, at the end, help to answer your questions about that. I'll talk about two other topics quickly before I turn it over to Brett. And one of those is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is led by Mia Mallory, who is actually a pediatrician. So she's over at Children's, and she comes over with us. And she's assisted by Lisa Johnson, who's a family doc, who works part-time in that office also. So the two of them are really working, as you can imagine, very, very hard right now to help us develop programs and plans to address the concerns that we have with the anti-racism efforts that are so sorely needed in this country. And certainly our Cincinnati community isn't exempt from that. And our local community, where we are in the College of Medicine, isn't exempt from that. I started off my last town hall meeting where I met with the entire medical school faculty and staff with a very simple 3-word statement: Black Lives Matter. And we all are taking that very, very seriously, and we got to get beyond the discussion into the action pieces and really try to make some cultural changes in our society to do things. And we look at it from a lot of perspectives. When I came to Cincinnati, and it was no different from where I went to medical school in Washington, D.C., you had your private clinics and you had your indigent clinics. And the indigent clinics tended to be, mostly done on racial lines. They were in socioeconomic to some extent, but mostly on racial lines. There's some structural racism built into the systems that are like that. If you look at the history of University of Cincinnati, it used to be General Hospital. The indigent hospital and Holmes Hospital where the private doctors took their private patients. That was before I got here to do that. And the evolution, we're going in the right direction, but the events of the past year have really made us want to look and to step up where we're going and to make some changes like that. So Mia has put together a task force to really look at a lot and to help us identify best practices going across the different areas that we can do. And one of the things that we are looking at right now is our medical school curriculum, the medical student curriculum. And we're using a model that was done at Boston University, and they started a year ago before all this came. So they were a step ahead of us, but really looking at how we present things in the curriculum. So what are the issues when you talk about the 70-kilogram white male, which is every class that I had in pharmacology and physiology is the standard that you use. Well, you use that, but then you're missing out on other things. So what are the gender issues related to that? What are the ethnic issues related to that? So how do we look at what we present, why we present it, and how we present it? Do you need to, or when is it appropriate, when is it not appropriate, in doing a patient presentation to give ethnicity? Is it really important or not? And we have to really start looking. In some cases it may be, but in many cases, or maybe most cases, it's not. And does that play into some of our then inherent unconscious biases and things like that too? But to me, it also sums up, one thing just, is pretty simple, is that it really is just respecting one another. And we all have different things. And if we all just can respect one another and support one another and help one another, we will find a way to get through both the coronavirus pandemic and through the anti-racism. It will take time. It will take effort. It will take hard work. But the first step in solving a problem is to identify that you do have a problem. And I think we understand now that we do have a problem. I'm going to talk about one other topic, and then when Brett talks, I just want Brett, before he goes into the research summary, to just give 2 minutes on what you're doing. Brett is also our chair of Department of Neurology and Rehabilitation Medicine, and as one of our leaders, has done some activities in his department to help address the issues. So I want, the example of some of the things that we're doing at the college level and even at the department level. So Brett, if you would be willing to do that, I'd appreciate that. And Dr. Austin Wand had put in a question to me along those before the meeting this session is, what are we doing to support those students? Because in particular, our Black students are hurting with everything that's going on, and what are we doing to support them? And I can assure you that, through the work of people like Mia, Mallory, the people of Lisa Johnson, but also Aurora Bennett, who's our, senior, our Associate Dean for Student Affairs, Phil Diller, Steve, our entire faculty is really looking out to support and help the students, and acknowledge their pain, acknowledge what they need to do, and to really do what we can to help them not only survive, but thrive and to become the outstanding physicians that the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine graduates each year. The last thing I want to talk about is something that just hit the press. I think it was last week or the week before, and it is the Webster Gustin Scholarship Program. And, you know, I just can tell you just very briefly, the story is I'm sitting in my office one day, and some of you know Karen Christian, who's my assistant, and she's been here for 35 years or 30 years, I think now, working for more deans than I can count. You know, so two older gentlemen walk in to her, you know, and wanted to see me. And I was really, really busy, so I couldn't see them that day. But Karen is just so sweet and so good, just told them to come back the next day. And these guys came back to see me the next day, said they only wanted 10 minutes of my time, and started to talk about, you know, a family foundation that had some money and that they would like to help support medical students and scholarships to do that. And, you know, it was just the most delightful gentleman you would meet. And we sat there talking, came up, we noodled. 10 minutes were up and they started apologizing because we were going over the 10 minutes that they were allotted. And I'm thinking, gee, you know, you're talking about giving me money. I'm not going to cut you off after 10 minutes to do that. But they actually then, we scheduled a follow-up meeting. We had a series of meetings over a couple months, and they wound up with the offer of 10 full 4-year scholarships for 4 years in a row. So 40 students are going to get full 4-year scholarships, to the tune of close to $7 million for that. And these were guys who just walked in. It was because Karen, I'm convinced it was because Karen was so nice to them when they first came in, and even saying, no, I wasn't available and they couldn't meet, you know, with me that day. They still came back because of her. But a week or so ago, we put it out in the local internally, and it was picked up by I think the Business Courier and also by the Channel 19 News on there. And if you know you want to see something really good on news, 2 parts about that news clip. One is the mask that I was wearing. Okay, the mask that I was wearing. Melanie Cushion, who's a senior associate dean for research, has a friend who makes all kinds of neat masks for people. So this one I just happened to have that day was one, and she made it for me as my role as a family doc with all kinds of medical instruments and things like that to do that. Don't listen to my interview, but just look at the mask to do that. I also have an Anthony Fauci mask, a Tony Fauci mask that she made for me. But the other part of it is listen to the student's interview of the first-year student who got one of those. Oh, he has better than a mask there. But the first-year student, and you know how honored he was, and how excited, and how awed he was to be able to receive that. Now, this foundation will not let me publicly acknowledge them, so I can't, you know, with this incredible gift. And that breaks my heart because I think I would like to put them up on a pedestal and have balloons and all kinds of stuff. But they named it, the scholarship, very carefully after Warren Webster and Byron Gustin, both graduates of the medical school who practiced here in Cincinnati. Warren was a general, no, they weren't the class of 1970, Chris, that's better. But Warren and Byron Gustin, who was a cardiologist in town. It just so turns out that when I came here as a family medicine resident my first year, I did some cardiology, rotation, and I actually spent some time with Byron in his practice. Of course, he didn't remember that, but I certainly remembered that to do that. And Warren, and just to be able to honor those 2 wonderful physicians, outstanding physicians, pillars of our community, and do that. And the foundation not wanting to get the recognition for that, and the family not to do that, was just incredible. So despite all the confusion, consternation, chaos, and everything else that goes along with COVID, all my C words like that, you know, to have people come in, it gives you that glimmer of hope that we will get through this, that there is humanity out there, a lot of really caring people. And it was just such a heartwarming experience to work with them. So that's really, wanted to do that one. I'm going to turn it over to Brett. I don't know if Chris wanted to say something, but Brett, don't forget to talk a little bit about what you're doing with the anti-racism efforts.
Sure. Thanks, Andy. I'll introduce Brett, and then again, we will do questions after Dr. Casella. So it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Dr. Brett Casella, who is the Albert Barnes Voorhees Professor and Chair of the Department of Neurology and Rehabilitation Medicine at the UC Gardner Neuroscience Institute. Brett is also the Senior Associate Dean for Clinical Research at the College of Medicine and Chief of Research at UC Health. Brett?
Thank you. So I appreciate Andy giving a day-to-day account of what it's like in the dean's office. I mean, it's always funny. There's puppies, people walking on the street and give millions of dollars. It's just, every day. It's just a regular occurrence. And so it's a pleasure to work there with Dr. Flack in the dean's office. I'm happy to be here talking about the COVID research. Before I do that, just on our Vantage request. So just as an example of what one department is doing in neurology, with regard to thinking about anti-racism and social justice, we have, since the many events that happened earlier this year that sparked sort of a movement, we have taken the time to really carefully examine our mission, our vision, and our core values, and have just finished a rewrite of that we'll be posting on our website. We have a core group of faculty that have really taken leadership, which I also sit on and endorse, we're calling it the Equity Alliance. And one of my faculty, who's really one of the gurus of wellness at the College of Medicine, named Jen Milano, she has an acronym that each letter stands for something which I can't describe to you. But we're in the process of making a web page for the department, which will serve as a resource. We're going to sort of roll out a program where we enlist people from across the entire department, meaning faculty, trainees, the staff that work in clinic, our administrative assistants, the entire department. We will be planning group activities when someday we can get together again, or if we do a virtual retreat. But for our next retreat, we intend to have some time probably spent on microaggression training and implicit bias training. We've been even with some discussions of whether part of our citizenship compensation for our faculty could involve implicit bias training. We're going to have a series of book offerings and book clubs, some opportunities for people to share stories. We call it anonymous confessions, if you will, where people can talk about a difficult situation that they've been in and been part of, or something that they want to share as a way of a jumping off point, so that we can not just put a pretty web page up, but actually try and get to some actions. The final piece of that we've been kicking around is, and really we're thinking very broadly, this is anti-racism, but also broadly just trying to have a better empathetic understanding and tolerance, building a safe workplace where everyone feels comfortable, so that there's no stigma with saying that I'm burned out clinically, or that I have depression and anxiety it's related to the COVID pandemic. Right now, people may not feel safe saying that, and we're trying to build an environment where we can. And the last thing we're going to do is really, for years, one of the things that I installed as chair that I feel very strongly about is we have at least a monthly attempt to try and give back to the community. We've been engaged each year. We pick a charity that we intend to work with during that year. It's largely been Tender Mercies, which is a residential psychiatric facility downtown. And we're going to try and expand that and really think about social justice offerings so people can choose to get engaged in the community if they so choose to do it. For us, it's a team building exercise, but also I think important to give back. So let me turn to COVID. It's my pleasure to represent the work of a lot of people, many people working harder on this than myself. But we're really proud of what we've been able to accomplish. And it's been remarkable to see that so many people who, like myself, are not infectious disease doctors, have no prior knowledge of virology, but really to see so many people, so many talented people from across the College of Medicine and the other colleges, nursing, allied health sciences, and the main campus really come together around a major pandemic and be able to make a significant contribution. And I feel really great that the College of Medicine is making a major contribution to the national effort. So when the pandemic started, we quickly organized ourselves with a committee to have kind of a central maintenance or monitoring of all the research that's happening around COVID. And the first thing we did was gather some money from a variety of sources, including philanthropy, to be able to give internal grants. So we gave out 11 grants in about a 12-day span of time, which is remarkably fast to make a call for grants, have people write them, and to award $425,000 in grant funding to 11 different groups. Children's did something, it took them a little longer, but they still were able to do 6 grants, slightly larger volume, so lower number, larger volume of money. But altogether, 17 grants that were awarded in about a month's time after the pandemic really started. Part of that for us was forming a central biorepository. We realized that a lot of the people who wrote grants wanted to have biospecimens from people who were infected. And so we formed a central biorepository and a mechanism by which when people come in suspected of COVID, we consent them and can draw serial blood samples, no less than 5 and as many as 7 over the course of their stay in the hospital. So now we have, as of today, 149 patients enrolled, of which 100 were COVID positive, and then 49 that were suspected but serve as controls. So that's a lot of samples that we're banking and now distributing back out to labs to do research that spans from basic science, like the molecular structure using X-ray crystallography of the virus, or cultured hepatic cells, understanding the virus's impact on the liver, and cultured heart cells, how the virus impacts the heart. And then we have clinical research that includes everything from wearing masks and what the efficacy is of different types of masks, to a unique phase 1 clinical trial of sirolimus, an anti-rejection drug, funded by that first round of grants. Then we started getting studies, and we have had participation. We received more than 100 different studies that we've been asked to participate in. We stopped counting at 100, but that was a month ago. I think we hit the 100 mark. And we are in currently 20 studies. 13 are actively enrolling, and 7 are in process to start very soon. Over the course of time, we're just about to 300 enrollments of subjects into clinical trials. And that work has included initially trials aimed at attacking the immune system and modulating the immune system, knowing that it's revved up and overactive in COVID. And so we were part of some hydroxychloroquine studies as an example, plus the sirolimus that I mentioned, as well as an agent that attacks the complement system. We did have one trial of a novel antiviral that did not really pan out. And then we moved to convalescent plasma, where we did studies of hospitalized patients, and we're still actively enrolling patients into outpatient trials. We've now been pivoting to the monoclonal antibodies. Obviously, that's a hot topic. We have several studies underway, including one that attacks hotspots and skilled nursing facilities. But we're going to be part of the major national effort, which is called the Active Trial Platform, with a group of trials in the outpatient setting and a group of trials in the inpatient setting. We're also going to be involved in anticoagulation studies. There's a major national effort coordinated around that called Active 4. So we're in all of the major trials using most of the major approaches towards the virus that are being pushed out by the NIAID. The last thing is vaccines, and we're working very closely with Children's. As you know, Children's has had a great vaccine center since the polio vaccine with Dr. Sabin, and is well known for that. And they have been working on the Pfizer vaccine, which is one of the trials that's furthest along, and maybe one of the first ones that might have enough events to get to an FDA analysis. While they were doing that one, we picked up the Moderna study. And so we are actively enrolling in the Moderna study. As of today, it's 197 subjects, yours truly being one of them. I have no idea what I got, but I'm enrolled. And one of the things that we're really proud of is that one of the needs for the Moderna study is to really make sure we have a broad and diverse population. And we've been very successful with very intentional efforts to get people of color and across the spectrum of race, ethnic groups. So much so that we were great to have a visit from Operation Warp Speed, which got a lot of very positive press for the organization. And with that, there was some great publicity that has come and is coming, not just locally, but in fact, there was an article written about the visit with pictures taken by our marketing and PR staff that appeared in Science. So one of the most prestigious medical journals that there is, scientific journals that there is. We got the attention of our scientific colleagues in Science, and now HBO is coming back, I think, in 2 weeks. They're going to do a very significant special on development of the vaccines. And they're going to come back and do even further interviews. They were present for the Operation Warp Speed visit as well. So this is great press for the College of Medicine, for UC Health, for our entire organization, and great for the city of Cincinnati to know that we can have that kind of impact and really show that we're making our contribution to the national effort. As Children's is finishing up with Pfizer, their intention was to pivot to the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine. But if you're following the news, as of 2 days ago at least, the trial I know has not been restarted in the US. And so we didn't get to the point of enrolling any subjects to the best of my knowledge. And we're still hoping if they restart it that we might have a site here in Cincinnati, because we hope to continually allow patients to enroll into the vaccine trials, knowing that Moderna will probably close before we can get the 500 subjects we're hoping to enroll here. So overall, almost 300 in clinical trials per se, and over 800 total if you look at all of the studies, including some natural history studies. And we're going to be doing a 4,000 person seroprevalence study in the region, and in about another month we'll start with that. So we're very actively engaged in research. Maybe one last comment, and I know we're at time, but we have a big grant from the NIH, the CTSA award. We call our version the CCTST because we really like long acronyms. But through that program, we did decide that we have lots of activity for research in the hospital setting and in the outpatient setting, but what about the community? So with the funding that we have there in cooperation between college and children's, we offered 8 different grants that look at various aspects of community response. We wanted to understand the impact on underrepresented groups. We wanted to look at how those groups are affected in terms of spread of the virus and the outcomes from the virus. We wanted to understand attitudes around mask wearing and how to impact behaviors around mask wearing. And we wanted to also look at other things that are quite unique. For example, one study is looking at how masks may cause vocal strain in healthcare workers and how it affects communication between people. And actually, a study that uses Twitter from the main campus to look at geographic non-adherence to mask wearing and how that leads to hotspots, and then have immediate targeted geographic interventions in the city. That's pretty cool, huh? To take Twitter and turn into something useful. I'm not very good at Twitter, so I think that's pretty useful. We had 8 grants awarded, about 50-50 from the college and children's, with 1 grant from the community itself, from the Black Nurses Association of Greater Cincinnati, which we're really excited to be engaged with them. So that is quite a long list, but an overview, and I hope you appreciate that it's been a busy time, but we've been very successful, I think, in quickly taking a lot of people, engaging them in COVID research and being able to have a major impact. Thank you.
Brett, thank you very much. I know I just continue to be just so proud to be an alum and hearing all of the great work that's going on for COVID with both therapeutics and vaccines. So we have about 15 minutes left for questions. So I would encourage you to put questions in the chat box for either Dr. Casella or Dr. Flack. And while you all are doing that, I'm going to go ahead and start. Brett, thank you very much for mentioning diversity. I know that's a huge concern, obviously, here locally and nationally with the COVID trials. Do you have any updates? I'm a pediatrician here locally. Do you know when Children's is going to be able or begin to start enrolling children in some of the COVID trials?
Good question. I saw Bob Frank do an interview, and I know because Children's is such a prominent medical center in of pediatrics, I think Bob and the excellent vaccine center we have are going to be thought leaders in this. I haven't heard an update from them. We do, on our committee, we do have representation from the college and children's. We want to make sure we're working together as much as possible, even though adults and children can be quite different, but we wanted to make sure we're linked. And I haven't had a chance to, I think Paul Spearman, who's been the representative to our committee primarily, Paul's not been able to make the last couple of meetings, and so I haven't heard the latest on this, but I know Bob and the vaccine center are working very hard Bob has certainly been advocating for that. So hopefully that will come sometime soon.
Definitely. He actually co-authored a recent article that was entitled Warp Speed, Why Are Children Stuck in Neutral? So sort of pushing that. He and I have done some recent podcasts for the Ohio AAP recently. Charlie Cavallo, who's also a pediatrician locally, just commented that they are recruiting 12 to 15-year-olds for the Pfizer study. And I would actually concur with that. My partner, actually, one of my partners in practice just got an email that she had sent about her daughter. So it sounds like they're starting with some adolescents. I just wondered if you had any other sort of recent updates. So thank you.
No, you're actually making me wonder if Moderna, what the bottom age limit is. I don't remember the details around that.
Sure.
So I'm not aware of whether they're doing adolescents or not.
No, we appreciate that. And again, I'll remind you to please enter some questions in the chat box. I'm just going to keep asking questions until people put something in. Andy, I'm going to give you the next question. Could you give us an update? There's been, I know that Greg Ruan recently stepped down as chair of the Department of Internal Medicine. Could you give everybody an update on where that search is at?
Sure. For a minute, I was worried that you're going to have me be debating Brett there, and I would lose that one. So I don't want to get caught in a debate like that. So, yes, the internal medicine search, we hired a search firm, Isaacson Miller, which is the same search firm that assisted with the recruitment of Tina Cheng, who will be starting next month as the new chair of pediatrics and the Elver Children's. And that firm worked with our search committee, and they narrowed it down to 6 candidates, and the 6 candidates have just completed, as of today, their interviews. So usually at this stage, we would go to a 2-day interview where you have them start early in the morning with breakfast and go all the way through. You don't even give them a lunch break or a bathroom break. You just beat them up. Well, this was a little different because it was all virtually, and they were done over 2 weeks. So they didn't have a 2-week time set, but they were meeting with everybody over that time. I've been incredibly impressed with the candidate pool. Any of the 6 can do the job. What now I'll be looking at getting some information and feedback like Children's did from the town hall and from the other things that they've done, and then putting that together and narrowing it down to 1 or 2 and then bringing them to campus. But again, most of them know something about Cincinnati, and some of them actually have been here, in some way, shape, or form, but some of them have never even been to Cincinnati to do things. So we'll get some virtual visits. So I'm hoping that by December, I'm hoping to announce the new chair. That won't be the start date. That may be a little bit optimistic just because if we get a flare of COVID and travel gets restricted again now or whatever, it's been so different and difficult in this process to do that. But we are about ready to we are very actively in that process, and with a pool of 6 that any one of those I think could do the job. It's a good pool to have. It's a good choice to have to make to do that. So now we still have several other interim chairs. We also have Miles Penzak, the chair of otolaryngology, has announced that he's stepping down at the end of June. To do that. So I still have interims in family medicine. I will have one in otolaryngology. I'll have otolaryngology, surgery. Brett, help me out. What else we have interims in?
Environmental health.
Environmental health is a big one. Yeah, to do that. So there's 5 or 6 interim chairs yet that we're going to need to work on in recruiting over the next several years.
Great, thank you. And I will as a pediatrician, I can't tell you how excited we are about Tina Cheng coming from Johns Hopkins. For those who don't know, she's a general pediatrician, which as a general pediatrician, I'm thrilled that our chair is a general pediatrician. And I've known Tina sort of peripherally through the years and through Tom DeWitt, and she's phenomenal. So thank you. I feel like I'm now taking the role of Susan Page. Let's talk about interviews for a minute. Andy, Charlie Cavallo posted a question. How will the mini-med interviews be done? So that's one question. And then I want to sort of piggyback on that. I know several of the residency programs, pediatric residency programs, I'm sure adult programs also are doing sort of virtual happy hours, virtual open houses. Is the College of Medicine doing any of that? And we have a phenomenal College of Medicine, and but I know one of the things from people that have never been to Cincinnati, maybe live on the East Coast, West Coast, have some trepidations about the city of Cincinnati. How is the admissions committee sort of approaching that?
Yeah, I think so. Our admissions committee does a very, very good job in the selection process, which is absolutely key. And they do an equally as good a job as being the best cheerleaders you can ever imagine. in selling the place and in selling that. I don't know all the details, so I can't give you all the details of that, but I have full faith and confidence that Abby and Jessica Marks and that team are pulling out all the stops, to do things, to virtual tours put together so people can see the college and doing things, matching the students up with students who are here and making personal connections, although not, all on, virtual connections like that and doing things. So they're doing, everything you can possibly do under these. To answer Charlie's question, all I know is that they're doing it. I'm sure it's with great difficulty, but they've had to modify it a little bit because there were 1 or 2 sessions where you had, 2 or 3 people in the room at the same time. So I think they've had to modify some. I can get more information about that, but I don't know the exact details of how that work out. On the residency side, you're absolutely right, Chris, is that, it's affecting the medical students, so the 4th-year medical students right now. All right, this is a time when they're applying to residencies. And, it's pretty much getting into residency interview season, but nobody's traveling. And so all of the residency interviewing is being done virtually also in doing that. And that's the same kind of issue that people have of how do you do those virtually? So they're doing creative things like, you get a group of applicants together on the phone, on a call like this with a, group of your residents and let them have an informal chat to try to sell the program, to talk about it, to do things. And then you got to do the virtual interviews. Now, if you have a student in Hawaii, you're making them get up at 2 a.m. so you can interview them at 8 or whatever. I mean, there's the logistics of this are really, really very difficult, to do, and for the students not knowing what to expect. So you see, I have a background here. I had another one that has College of Medicine on it beforehand, but it was red, and I had the red shirt on. I was afraid you wouldn't be able to see me with that one, so I pulled this one up. But we have created a background for the students to use. Brett is sitting there. I don't know if you recognize the building behind Brett. Okay, the UCGNI building, over there, to do that. But they've created a background for the students because some of the students, I use these backgrounds because I don't want you to see my office, papers all over the place and doing things like that to do it. So it looks a little nicer in doing these. We're making space available for both students and residents, in our facilities, so they can have a good internet connection. How is that going to work out when you're home and you have your dog barking, your kids screaming, your internet going spotty and going in and out, and you're trying to apply for a residency, to do this. So we're trying to do everything we can to accommodate in this strange and bizarre world.
Thanks, Andy.
If I could, Andy,
Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we're all trying to clean house on our websites because we have to have a good front face on this, right? We're being really creative about doing some sort of higher quality videos, and I know Phil Diller's working hard on what we can use as shared information about the city, about the college, about the campus, virtual tours. But the residents themselves have really jumped on the board with this. I mean, they're a lot smarter than old guys like us. They were, so they're doing videos of themselves and really kind of marketing a little bit to their future colleagues. We're also trying to be creative about whether we might do something like Uber Eats or send wine gift baskets to the candidates in lieu of a dinner, right? We usually have the candidates come in and have a dinner with our residents and see if we can do like a group Zoom call that has something nice, just a little treat for them. Try and keep some of that same atmosphere.
That's great. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. I want to make a comment and make you aware of a lecture series, and then I think we'll probably close with, I have a question for Brett. So first I want to let you know that the College of Medicine, you both had mentioned diversity as a priority for UC Health and the College of Medicine. And there is, over the course of the next several months, a health equity lecture series that's going to be taking place. Of course, it will be virtual. So I'm going to have Mary Jo is going to post the link. As alums, you are all invited to partake in that series. So Mary Jo is going to put the registration link. So I would encourage you to take a look at that, the agenda, the speakers. I had a chance to actually review it when they were looking at CME, and it's a fantastic program. So Mary Jo's going to put that in there. And then Brett, I'm going to sort of end with asking you, and I know Kim Francis was on, but she's off. I was on a university-wide sort of alumni leaders call a couple of weeks ago, and Brett spoke to alums from across the university and talking about the COVID trials, but also sort of, helping to fund some of those trials. And so, Brett, I don't know if you maybe wanted to mention if there are some alumni on the call that maybe want to sort of contribute or are able to sort of help with those trials, if there's a way for them to do that. And sort of helping with that fund.
No, thank you, Chris. So some of the research really we've put together on kind of a shoestring budget. The biorepository is a good example. It's going to be an invaluable resource for so many labs, right? And we hope that we originally took a poll when we were starting, and as many as 50 different labs said they could use samples for something in the future. And it's really just the amount of money we can give out as grants to start some pilot work, and how many samples we can collect and bank. After one of the calls, I've done several of those, like Chris mentioned, one of the calls that I was on, and we got a $15,000 gift right afterwards, and that allowed us to extract all the DNA. And so now we have DNA to share with investigators from the white blood cells of the patients, both COVID positive and COVID negative. So anything that anyone might be interested in donating to the research effort would go into these central resources. Coordinator time, just so when we have 20 active trials, we're stratifying enrollments, right, and trying to be equitable about it. And so we have to have a central resource to do screening and stratifying the enrollment in a randomized fashion, so we're not favoring any trial. And that too is expensive. And so no amount is too small, but no amount is too big either.
Great. Mary Jo, do you mind maybe putting Kim Francis's email in the chat box, that if people are interested and want to sort of learn more information or are feeling like they would like to contribute to that, Kim would probably be the best person to sort of begin that conversation with. I'm going to let Andy sort of wrap us up and have any last minute comments. But before I do that, I would be remiss. First off, I really want to thank Mary Jo Filhauer for putting this together. And just recognize that tomorrow Mary Jo is going to be leaving for St. Louis to visit her brand new grandson. So I wanted to say congratulations to Mary Jo and thank you for putting this together and allowing us to come together. And Andy, I'll turn it over to you if you have any last minute, comments and to get us out.
Just to thank everyone, for being with us, for supporting, the College of Medicine. It's a true privilege to be able to serve, as dean here, to work with that, and to once again, thank Mary Jo, and to also thank you, Chris. That award was very, very well deserved. You've been, as I told them, that I'd be real happy during my entire tenure as dean if you were just running the alumni council. You could be chair for life, as far as I'm concerned, like that. Really appreciate everything you do, and it's great to chat with some of the quiet alumni tonight.
I agree. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Please, if you have any questions, please reach out to us, and everybody have a great evening and stay safe. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.